Hi, welcome to 52 Weeks of Cooking. I made a huge mistake, and after I recorded my intro and outro, I accidentally deleted them from the camera. Oopsie. So we're just going to redo them right now, quick and dirty. This week, number 2, our theme is Scottish, and we're going to be making Cullen Skink pie. Cullen Skink is normally a soup, but we're going to make it, thicken it, and put it in a dish, and put some puff pastry over it, and bake it for an hour, and we're going to see how it does. Let's cook. You're going to need for this recipe, and we're halving this recipe. So you're going to need 225 millimeters or a scant 1 cup of milk, 142 millimeters or about a half cup of cream, 375 grams or about 13 ounces of fish, 112 grams or 4 ounces of potatoes, 25 grams of butter, about 1.5 tablespoons, and 22 and a half grams of flour, which is about an eighth of a cup or about 2 tablespoons. Puff pastry, 8 ounce, 250 grams. We're going to add our milk and our cream right now. So I have to mention that this recipe calls for smoked haddock. I cannot get smoked haddock. That's peppercorns and a bay leaf going in. I can't get smoked haddock here. It doesn't exist. Isn't going to happen. So we're using cod, and I'm going to add a little bit of liquid smoke to the cooking liquid in order to maybe hopefully get a little bit of a smoky flavor on it. I don't know how it's going to work out. Here's our liquid smoke. One of the most important things to remember about working with liquid smoke is that less is more. You need to be very, very careful with your liquid smoke. If you add too much, it has a really horrible bitter flavor. So since the liquid doesn't completely cover the fish, we're just going to sort of push it over the top of it as we're trying to get the fish cooked. I wouldn't have had to do this had I been able to find smoked fish. But the fish is done. The fish cooked until it was done. I don't have that in my notes. We're going to lift it out onto a plate and we're going to let it cool a little bit um, because we're going to flake it with a fork before we put it back into the liquid eventually. I just want to mention the learning curve on this YouTube video is a lot steeper than I thought it was. I need to clear my hands more often. Here we go. Now we're flaking. You're flaking. You're flaking the fish. See, you don't need this much of this, but I don't have a good point to cut from because I didn't pull my hands out of the... There we go. Now we're going to take our liquid and we're going to strain it through a sieve back into the pot, and we're going to cook that liquid for a little while. So this is just our peppercorns and our bay leaf, and according to the recipe, if you're using smoked fish, you'll have skin and bones left over. This was skinless, boneless cod, so we don't have to deal with any of that. We're adding our potatoes to the cooking liquid that's going to simmer like this in the potatoes for about 10 minutes. Now, it says in the recipe to cover and simmer, but I had a boil over even on the lowest setting that my stove would do. Now, I have a gas stove, so I don't know if an induction cooktop like they have in Europe is going to be a lower heat. You can see right there the boil over. So I've learned my lesson. I'm not covering this pot up again. We're going to add our leeks. Potatoes cook for about 10 minutes. The recipe said to cook the leeks for 2. I cooked them for 5 just to make sure they were tender. Because as we learned last week from Jacques Pepin, we use the entire leek, not just the white part. So we got the green parts of the leek in too. Wanted to make sure that they got nice and tender, so I cooked them just a little bit longer. Now they're tender and they're cooked, and we're going to use a slotted spoon and we're going to lift those out of the cooking liquid. We're not going to strain the cooking liquid again, but we're going to take these out because we're going to thicken our cooking liquid with our flour and our butter. See, again, cut point. Need a cut point. I'll get it eventually. So, got a clean pan. Now we're going to put our butter in. And this is still, heat's still on. We're over low heat right here. I think I kept it at low heat for the entire cooking time. I don't know that I ever. There's our melted butter. So we're going to add our flour. Now, right here, I think, is where I made a conversion error because this is too much flour. This is way too much flour for what I want it to do. And I've gone back over and I can't figure out what I did, but I made two conversions to this recipe. I halved the recipe and I converted from metric to imperial. So I halved the metric and then converted to imperial. And I don't know if I should have done that the other way around or what, but this is clearly too much flour. So we're going to use our cooking liquid, which in the recipe it says to pour the cooking liquid back in small bits and whisk it together. So we're just going to get this liquid in here and we're going to try and make this flour do what we want it to do. Now, the reason I kept going with this is because I had more flour, but I didn't have any more butter. That's another thing I need to remember to do is have extra stuff on hand because I had no choice but to just go forward with this. And I didn't think, I guess I could have used olive oil, but I don't know if it would have had the same taste. Definitely wouldn't have. Can you even do a roux with olive oil? I don't think so. So that's our cooking liquid in, and we're going to whisk this for a little bit. Just trying to really get that flour incorporated and get it smooth and get all of this. Yeah, you can see it kind of lumped up there a little bit. But we're going to stir and we're going to stir and we're going to stir until we get it right. And this is where a culinary instructor would tell me how much I suck. Where I'm pouring milk in there, we're adding liquid mainly because our two boilovers took a lot of liquid. We had one boil over with it lid on, and then we had one boil over with the lid off. And this is, again, all as low as my stove will go. So this may just be the downside of a gas stove for all I know. So we're going to whisk, and we're going to whisk, and we're going to whisk a little more. And we're going to keep whisking, and we're going to keep whisking, trying to get that flour incorporated. That looks pretty smooth right there. That looks pretty good. That's a more appropriate amount of liquid for what we need to do. And it's looking like we've gotten that flour incorporated well into this. You can't hear the whisking noises, which is probably for the best because I kept hitting the side of the pan, making a dinner bell-like clang. Because the editing software also has a learning curve on it, and I'm still getting used to that. So, and we're whisking, and we're still whisking. We need to make absolutely sure. There we go. We're whisked. We look really good. And we're going to stir this a little more. We've added in a little more liquid after what I added in on camera. And we're just going to make sure, again, that we get that incorporated and get that flour mixed in. Now, we're going to take our leek potato mixture and we're going to stir it back in to the cooking liquid. And we're going to take our flaked fish, say that 5 times fast, and we're going to put it back in to the cooking mixture. And we're going to stir that together a little bit. Everything is cooked. Everything is put together. We're just going to let that thicken a little bit. And then we're going to put it into our 2. Recipe says 4, but we're doing 2. Oven-proof dishes. I sprayed these with a little bit of cooking spray. As loose as this is, I don't think I really needed to. But so those are our 2 dishes, and we're going to put them in the fridge, and we're going to chill them for an hour at this point. While they're chilling, we're going to roll out our puff pastry. Now, the puff pastry, you don't have to roll it out till it's paper thin. You just need to stretch it out a little bit and stretch it push it down and stretch it out a little bit. Just a couple of rolling pins, times over with the rolling pin. Now we're gonna, our dishes came out of the fridge. Our puff pastry, after we rolled it out, went back in and chilled for about 20 minutes. Because you don't want hot puff pastry. It really, really needs to be cool when you work with it or it starts to melt. So I should probably pretend to try and be super chef and use my knife and cut this to the exact measurement just by looking at it with my eye, but I'm not super chef. I'm not that good. I'm using scissors on the puff pastry, and that's okay. So the scissors it is. You want to cut this a little bit bigger than the dish itself. Just, I cut it even with the outside of the dish. As you can see right there, I'm going around the outside with the scissors. Because what we're going to do is got a dish of water here, and you can use a brush, but I'm using my fingers. I'm going to brush a little water around the edge of the puff pastry, just around the edge. And that's going to help it adhere to the oven-proof dish. And this trick works so well that it can sometimes be hard to get the puff pastry off the rim of the dish after it's cooked using this trick. So now we're just going to sort of push it into the dish around the edge and make sure that we're sealed. Just want to make sure that we've got a good seal around the edge and we're not going to have filling leaking out the side. Although we are going to cut a slash in the center of this. But this is why I rolled it out a little bit bigger, just to get it. There we go. See, that's a nice seal around the edges. I'm still futzing with it. And I'm futzing. So there's our egg wash, which is totally optional. You don't need to use it. I did. And our slash in the center, and we're going to put them in the oven. And they're going to be about 200 Celsius, about 400 Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes is how long these are going to cook. So 400 Fahrenheit, 200 Celsius for 30 minutes. And that's our final product right there, Cullen Skink Pie. It looks really pretty, but you can't really go wrong with puff pastry, now can you? Well, there you have it, Cullen Skink Pie. On the outro that I deleted, I tasted it and decided that it was a little too mild for me, so I added some hot sauce. Sorry, Scotland. Probably won't make this one again. If you like this video, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment. If not, that's okay too, and I'll see you next week.